Journey through more than 45 years of legendary jazz and creative music through the lens of photographer Barbara Barefield as she shares her photos, Detroit history, and stories with her special friends.
Writer, scholar, historian, and jazz lover Herb Boyd, saxophonist Roscoe Mitchell, clarinetist, saxophonist Wendell Harrison, pianist Pamela Wise, amazing bassist Marion Hayden, wonderful percussionist Gayelynn McKinney, jazz composer, and guitarist A. Spencer Barefield.
The music in the background is Dawoodiphone Dance by A. Spencer Barefield on the Transdimensional Space Window recording with Spencer on African harp, Anthony Howland on sax, and Tani Tabal on tablas. For more information about the JazzSpace Detroit documentary film you are about to view, or about ordering the book, visit barbarabarefield.com. Following the film, please stick around for a conversation with Barbara Barefield, Herb Boyd, Charles Ezra Farrell, and A. Spencer Barefield.
Welcome to this presentation by the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, opening minds and changing lives through the exploration and celebration of African American history and culture.
Welcome to JazzSpace Detroit, a history of some of Detroit's legendary jazz through the photography of Barbara Barefield with author Herb Boyd and special guests.
I love jazz and taking photographs. In the mid-1970s, I met Lenny and John Sinclair and Herb Boyd when we worked together on the Ann Arbor and then Detroit Sun newspaper. They introduced me to some great music, and I had the wonderful opportunities to meet and take photographs of many musicians.
It's an honor to be part of the Wright Museum's centennial celebration for Charlie Parker. For more than 45 years, I've had the honor of photographing thousands of jazz and creative musicians who were profoundly inspired and influenced by the music of Charlie Parker. Sadly, Charlie Parker died at the young age of 34, and I was only 4 years old at that time. My name is Barbara Barefield, and I'd like to share some photos and stories with you, along with some special friends of mine. Writer, scholar, historian, and jazz lover Herb Boyd will be joining me, as well as some incredible musicians and composers. Saxophonist Roscoe Mitchell, clarinetist, saxophonist Wendell Harrison, pianist Pamela Wise, amazing bassist Marion Hayden, wonderful percussionist Gayelynn McKinney, and my husband, jazz composer and guitarist A. Spencer Barefield. Bird's music lives on and brings great joy to our lives. But the inequalities and oppressive conditions that may have existed and caused his early death still exist today. But there is real hope for change, spearheaded by the Black Lives Matter movement. Music, art, and creative expression link our universal spirits to one another. It empowers our humanity and strengthens our capacity to love and overcome hatred, violence, and bigotry.
One of my first assignments as a photojournalist for the Ann Arbor Sun newspaper was to photograph the 1973 Ann Arbor Blues and Jazz Festival, and what an exciting opportunity that was. John Sinclair was one of the main organizers and opened my ears and heart to some incredible music. Hearing Sun Ra and his orchestra was an epiphany. My life was never the same after hearing Sun Ra, Ray Charles, Count Basie, Charles Mingus, Johnny May Matthews, and many others. Johnny May was known as the godmother of Detroit soul and as the first African-American female to own and operate her own record label. The following year, I photographed the godfather of soul, James Brown, at the 1974 Ann Arbor Blues and Jazz Festival. Detroit was and still is brimming with gifted musicians. My favorite spot to hear music in the 1970s was Cobb's Corner in the Cass Corridor, now known as Midtown. This is where I met my husband, composer-guitarist A. Spencer Barefield when he was playing with the great avant-garde ensemble Griot Galaxy, led by saxophonist Farouk Zibeh.
The hot jazz club was Cobb's Corner, and I'd go there with my friends and take photographs, and one night there was a new guitarist playing with Griot Galaxy.
That was me.
It was you.
Spencer would feature many of these musicians at the Detroit Institute of Arts in his 13-year Creative Arts Collective concert series. Entitled Creative Music at the DIA, he presented more than 100 concerts between 1979 and 1992, many of which were internationally broadcast on the radio. Just a few of the legendary composer-musicians presented, including virtuosic saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist, AACM and CAC founder Roscoe Mitchell, percussionist Andrew Cyril, saxophonist Oliver Lake, pianist and AACM founder Muhal Richard Abrams, violinist Leroy Jenkins, electronic computer genius and trombonist George Lewis, multi-reed bamboo flautist Douglas Eward, Art Ensemble of Chicago and its members, trumpeter Lester Boyd, percussionist Famadou Don Moyer, bassist Malachi Favors, and members of the AACM, BAG, and many others, the most accomplished composers and musicians of avant-garde jazz.
And it was about getting well-known, established guest musicians from all over the country to come work with Detroit musicians, and there would be an exchange of ideas and music, and something new would come out of it every time we did a concert. So
the house band for the series included Spencer with saxophonist Farouk Zibeh, percussionist Tani Tabal, bassist Jaribu Shahid, and saxophonist Anthony Holland. They're standing in the back row of this photo. In the front row, we see saxophonist educator Donald Washington, who founded and led the Bird Train Sko Now education band and mentored some future stars such as James Carter and Cassius Richmond. And trumpeter Marcus Belgrave, who mentored dozens of future stars, including pianist Jerry Allen. In this photo, Spencer, Jaribu, and Tani are joined by a little violinist. That's our 4-year-old daughter, Janina. Determined to play music with her dad, she is now an accomplished violinist. You may have seen her string ensemble, Public Quartet, at the Detroit Jazz Festival, the Detroit Institute of Arts with their guest James Carter, or during their year-long residency at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art. Next year, they will return to Detroit to perform with Spencer, Roscoe Mitchell, and others on Spencer's future concert series. But looking back, Cobb's Corner, the DIA, the Wright Museum, and the Montreux Detroit Jazz Festival are just some of the spots where I heard many of the musicians Herb will tell you about, known as the Detroit Jazz Masters, and some of the musicians they inspired.
Barbara and I are just absolutely elated and excited, enthusiastic to be participants in this centenary, the celebration of the life of Charlie Yardbird Parker. What a phenomenal artist he was. And, you know, it's taken a veritable village of artists and activists to capture the magic and the magisterial flights that he had within the realm of music. In December of 1947, you have this here classic recording of Bird with one of his most formidable quintets. He's up front, like with Miles Davis, the great trumpeter. Of course, Miles stayed here in Detroit for a while. The pianist, Duke Jordan, and of course the bassist, Tommy Potter, performed so often with Bird. And also, along with him, kind of a usual companion, the battery of drums, the great Max Roach. And one of the tunes from that session was called Bluebird. And we speculate that possibly had an influence on Clarence and Mary Eddings when they founded the Bluebird Inn. And of course, you know, all the phenomenal musicians that performed there. That's like one of my favorite West Side locations. I live not too far from that place. And of course, as a young person, couldn't get in there, but you could stand outside and you could hear that music and hear these here formidable musicians that performed there. The Bluebird Inn. I mean, can never forget that location. Of course, the Paradise Theater, we have to keep that in mind in terms of the place too where Bird made an appearance. But one of the musicians that had a very direct connection with Bird was the pianist Barry Harris. So he's 90 years of age and lives right here in New York City, where I live now. But my heart continues to be in Motown in Detroit. He has his workshops in Midtown Manhattan. 90 years of age, but still just as active as ever. But what most Detroiters remember about Barry Harris is that his mentoring that he did here in this city. One of the musicians that I went to school with was Roy Brooks. And Roy used to tell me stories about going through there and learning the kind of the fundamentals of jazz, you know, particularly the improvisation. That was like Barry's forte. And the percussionist that he was, Roy picked up on a lot of those lessons. And some of those people who were with him at the house there on the West Side was Charles McPherson. Charles, I mean, an outstanding alto saxophonist, and many feel that is perhaps the best descendant and one who captures the energy and creativity that Bird expressed. Of course, there is the Baron, Harold McKinney. Harold said that he first heard Bird, you know, listening to one of those jukeboxes. It's a place where you can go and drop a few coins in there and hear all of his great music of the time. Harold said this is where he first heard the sounds of Charlie Parker, and it had a tremendous influence on him and forced him right into the kind of very, very imaginative creations that he's going to create in his life. See, he was a product of a very, very large and creative family. I mean, you talk about the McKinney clan, my goodness. Of course, there was Ray McKinney, outstanding bassist, and his daughter, Gayelynn, his second wife, you know, Michelle Jara McKinney.
I am the oldest of his children, and so therefore I feel obligated to make sure his music stays alive. And so this McKinney project is very special to me because I called upon many of my friends and Dad's friends to do this project. So Marcus Belgrave and Wendell Harrison and Edward Gooch, who played on Voices and Rhythms of the Creative Profile, played on my McKinney record. And it was so interesting to be a grown-up, you know, a grown person now, not 11, in the room with these guys playing with them on this music that I heard them do when I was 11. My peers were on there, Marion Hayden, James Carter, Regina Carter, the late, great Jerry Allen is on there. And so it's a wonderful tribute to my father, and it was done with a lot of love.
But we talk about McKinney within the context of the Jazz Masters. And this was an art award that was given to him by the Jazz Midwest. And by Jazz Masters, we're talking about the great trumpet player, no longer with us, that's Marcus Belgrave. You know, what a popular performer he was in this city and elsewhere. And of course, there's Teddy Harris. We lost Teddy back in 2015. And add to that, the inestimable Wendell Harrison.
These are my comrades, you know, that I've been working with for the last maybe almost 60 years. They named the streets after these guys. Marcus Belgrave has got a street after him now. Harold McKinney, the McKinney Way, Teddy Harris, and you know, Roy Brooks made a world imprint, you know, since the 60s. Roy Brooks and
you. In the late 1970s, I worked at the Detroit Free Press as art director of the Sunday magazine and learned the art of color tinting photographs from Tony Spina, the Pulitzer Prize-winning head of the photo department. Here are a few of my favorite photographs that I transformed from black and white by applying layers of translucent oil paints onto the photos with cotton balls and cotton wrapped around a toothpick. This was a method used to colorize photos before color photography. These were the days before computers, cell phones, and digital cameras.
And this is the Belle Isle and the Detroit River and an incredible apartment building. So I took the photograph and I blew it up to 11 by 17, black and white. I hand colored it the old-fashioned way.
Sippy Wallace was a blues and recording star in the 1920s. She moved to Detroit in the late 20s and was rarely seen except as her church organist for the next 40 years. In the mid-1960s, her friend, blues star Victoria Spivey, urged her to perform and record again, and in the 1970s, I met her. Here she is singing and playing the piano at a private party with her great-grandniece. Sippy had such style and became an international performing and recording star in her 70s and 80s. Here is another memorable image from Sippy's performance in New York at Lincoln Center with Coco Taylor, Big Mama Thornton, Little Brother Montgomery, concert organizer Rosetta Wrights, and others from the Blues is a Woman concert at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1980. John Lee Hooker was another blues great born in the South in the early 1900s. He spent time in Detroit and was a regular on Hastings Street in Detroit's Paradise Valley, according to Marcia Music, seen here with her late husband, artist David Philpott. Marcia's dad, John Von Battle, owned a record store and recording studio in Paradise Valley, where Hooker recorded and sometimes slept. It is also where Aretha Franklin made her first recording at age 14. Paradise Valley was the thriving business and entertainment center of Detroit's densely populated African-American residential area in Detroit, known as Black Bottom, from the 1920s through the 1950s. Here's where all the greats played, including Dizzy Gillespie and Sarah Vaughan. Construction of freeways in the 1960s demolished this vibrant area, destroying hundreds of businesses and displacing thousands. In the late 1970s, I shot this photograph of the Clifford Fears Dance Theater downtown in front of the 606 Horseshoe Lounge, one of the last standing reminders of Paradise Valley, until it was turned to rubble in about the year 2000. Lafayette Park, I-75, Ford Field, and the Paradise Theater Orchestra Hall are located now where Black Bottom once stood. Paradise Theater is also where a 16-year-old Betty Carter won an important talent contest. Known for her scatting and improvisation, she later impressed the great Miles Davis, who recommended her to Ray Charles. She went on to perform with Ray and many other legendary musicians. Spencer's recording After the End includes this photo of Spencer flying through space on the cover. This LP also features the bass virtuoso Richard Davis, Andrew Cyrille on drums, and Oliver Lake on sax. It was recorded in 1989 when Spencer was presenting regular concerts at the Detroit Institute of Arts featuring hundreds of gifted musicians, including the young violinist Regina Carter, a teenage saxophonist James Carter, and pianist Jerry Allen, who was mentored by the great Marcus Belgrave.
No musical or jazz occasion was complete without Marcus Belgrave. How absolutely explosive he was as a musician, to say nothing of the kind of legacy that he carried with him everywhere he went. Talking about, Ray Charles and, Hank Crawford, some of the bands that he was in and out of over the years. But for the most part, you're talking about his own ensembles and of course working in close association with the Baron, with McKinney, working closely with Wendell Harrison, and certainly being a part of Tribe. It's hard to talk about any kind of musical aggregation without mention of Tribe, you know. And then, of course, you get to Wendell Harrison, you're talking about another of the jazz masters. Okay, you've got him as a businessman, you've got him as an educator, you've got him as an entrepreneur, you've got him as a musician. And you can get him along with Pam Wise, you know, his companion, his wife, outstanding pianist in her own right. And together, that combination, they got a new recording out right now that captures, you know, some of the essence of their vitality, of their creative ingenuity.
In fact, I just released on the London label, the Strut London label, I released a Tribe LP with Harold's music, some of the music that wasn't released. This is the, can you see this?
Yes.
There are a lot of musicians on there, a lot of musicians. The old Tribe up here with Charles Moore.
I see some of my photos there.
This is your photo, Barbara. This is you, Barbara. That's you, Barbara.
Yeah.
In the 70s, I released the Bebopper's Method book, which chronicled some of the lessons I took from Barry Harris, and I modified and expanded on it, and actually documented some of these exercises and etudes, jazz etudes, that would help students to play like Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, and Diz.
Wendell Harrison, hey, he kind of followed me at Northwestern High School. You know, you talk about Northwestern High School, you got Charles McPherson, an outstanding alto saxophonist coming out of that school, to say nothing of, you know, later on, Ernie Rogers, and of course the James Carter, who was the whole with the Bird Train School Now period, to say nothing of his own recording legacy, which is like extensive. Teddy Harris, I mean, almost any reed instrument that you could put in his hand, he drew from it. And for many, many years, he was the music director for Aretha Franklin.
I'm driving, and I get this call, and I answer the phone, and I started not to because it said no name, but I answered it. Something told me to. And she said, "Gayelynn?" I said, "Yes." Sounded like my mother. And she said, "This is Aretha." I said, "Aretha? Franklin? Oh." I said, "Excuse me, let me just pull over." And that's when she, you know, gave me a very quick list of things that I needed to prepare for because I was going on tour.
Teddy Harris, you know, we got a shot of him on the soprano saxophone, and Barbara caught him in mid-solo in front of the Paradise Theater Orchestra. And if you look in that orchestra, you see what I would think to be representative of the music jazz community in this city, from a trombonist Ed Gooch for baritone saxophone, Beans Bowles. And Beans Bowles, a lot of people don't know his connection not only with the jazz community, but also with the Motown, and particularly with Stevie Wonder.
But I always wanted to be a jazz pianist. And when I first came to Detroit around in 1980, there was a wonderful lady that I met at the time, and her name was Jerry Allen. And, you know, I was quite impressed by Jerry. Marcus and Wendell introduced me to her. Although Jerry was really on another level. I had just begun getting my jazz chops together, you know. And there were other female musicians too that really encouraged me, such as Alice Coltrane, in particular the great Nina Simone, who was a wonderful pianist, composer, vocalist. She was a person that was very influential, and she always used her voice to speak out against injustice and you know, and I think I kind of picked that up in some of the things that I would do, is to use your musical ability to also speak out against injustice and racism and what's going on in the world. Alice Coltrane was also a big influence, as she, you know, was a wonderful musician that also played piano and harp and was married to the great John Coltrane. And, you know, her managing, you know, a household and being a wonderful musician, and she still was able to carry on her aspirations and her dreams. And, you know, that's another part of it that we don't see, is being great homemakers and parents and mothers, and also being able to manage your career, which brings me to the great bassist Marion Hayden, you know, who Marion and I have worked together for many, many years. And I also always admired her. She just, no matter what, she just keeps like the energizer buddy. She just, like those 24 hours, you know, raised 2 beautiful sons and took care of her mother and never missed a beat.
Detroit is a great city to learn music in. And I was really fortunate in my household. I had a chance to listen to a lot of music. I heard a lot of jazz from my dad, who was a huge jazz lover. And I heard some more classical music and more kind of great American songbook music from my mother. That's what she enjoyed. And my parents were very forward-thinking people. They never said to me, girls don't play bass. So as soon as I got to about 12, first I started playing cello about age 9. And when I got to age 12 and wanted to play the bass, they went down to a store downtown in Detroit called Addison's Music, which was on Broadway, and got me a bass. And as soon as I got that bass, I took it downstairs to my basement and started playing off of records, just listening and trying to copy everything I heard. Then I had a chance to meet Wendell Harrison, Marcus Belgrave, and Harold McKinney, and other great musicians at a summer youth program called Metro Arts. And this is one of the reasons why I know youth programs are so impactful. I was just really fortunate to be taken under the wing of some really fabulous musicians and some great vocalists here in Detroit, people like Ursula Walker, Naima Chamberlain. There's two great living vocalists that I've had a great opportunity to work with and learn so much from.
Tell me about Straight Ahead.
Well, I should say that Straight Ahead is a fabulous project that I've been involved with for over 20 years. But I should also say that I always had a template for women as musicians, not only vocalists but also instrumental musicians here in Detroit. So when I first used to go out and hear music, one of the folks I used to listen to was Norma Jean Bell. Norma Jean Bell was a fantastic alto saxophone player. When Straight Ahead came along in the late 80s, founded by Mickey Brady, and when Regina Carter came back to town in the late 80s, and that's when that band really came together. It was just a really great natural fit of just some excellent musicians who happened to be women.
We were on an exchange program to Switzerland because, you remember the Montreux Jazz Festival used to be a sister festival to the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. So our group went to Switzerland to perform in the Montreux Festival, and a group from Switzerland came to Detroit to play in our Montreux Festival. We were just gonna do some stuff in the clubs during the festival. And we were rehearsing in this hotel room. Little did we know that somebody heard us and went to Claude Knobs, who was the director of the festival, and told him, about us and how we sounded, apparently. And that ended up landing us on the stage opening for Nina Simone.
We have a fabulous cadre of women instrumentalists that come from Detroit. Regina, in my estimation, is really one of the greatest artists of our generation. Swing, swing, swing. because the woman knows how to really swing a violin, which is a hard thing to do. There's not that many people playing the violin that really have been able to internalize the swing field the way Regina has. But I think the other thing that I think a lot about her is that, to me, she is the embodiment of what I consider to be the Detroit sound. My feeling of the Detroit sound is that you have the Detroit sound, then you have all the elements that the Black diaspora brings to the table. You have the elements of blues, you have the elements of funk, you have the elements of jazz, different kinds of jazz, avant-garde music. You have all these elements, and that you're able to play those authentically, because it really is in the drinking water here in our town. And when I think about Shahida Nurullah, also someone that I've known, I think Shahida and I met when we were 14 or 15. First of all, her voice is elegant and pure. There's a purity to her voice that I don't hear often in vocalists. If you've heard Shahida once, you will never forget her voice. And people often come to her and say, I heard you such and such, and I just never forgot you. Her voice is unforgettable.
Now on to another one of our very favorites, Gayelynn McKinney.
Gayelynn, my sister, my rhythm sister. Gayelynn has been my right hand for in the rhythm section for so many fabulous years. On a professional basis, Gayelynn is orchestral. It's one of the things that I love about her playing. Not only is her time impeccable, but when she plays the drums, she also listens from the standpoint of a composer, because she is a composer.
Could you talk to me briefly about the importance of women in jazz? There aren't very many women percussionists, so you really are one of the trailblazers.
There are a lot more women percussionists now than when I was growing up. I was felt pretty alone when I was growing up. You know, I remember I was standing at the bus stop and this little girl said, "You play drums. Drums are for boys. You shouldn't be playing drums." And I said, well, I like drums. I'm a girl, and I like playing the drums. And it made me feel really bad. And so I almost quit until my father came home and said, I saw another little girl playing the drums. He had gone to New York, and she was playing with Clark Terry. I said that to me. I was so excited. I said, oh, what's her name? And that little girl, who was 8 at the time, turned out to be Terry Lynn Carrington.
Wow. Beginning in 2007, Spencer and I, through the Creative Arts Collective, along with our neighborhood organization, the Palmer Woods Association, launched Palmer Woods Music and Homes, a series of jazz, classical, and world music, and some blues too, concerts held in the majestic homes and gardens in Detroit's historic Palmer Woods. We began the series to support the arts and change Detroit's image at that time as a city of decay and ruins. We knew better and wanted to showcase that Detroit was, and is, filled with some of the world's most gifted musicians and artists, and fabulous neighborhoods and architecture. We presented many of Detroit's most celebrated musicians for 13 years. As a very Detroit-centric concert series, we focused on musicians who live in Detroit or who had very strong connections to Detroit, including musicians who had won top arts recognitions as Kresge Arts Fellows and eminent artists, as well as National Endowment for the Arts Heritage awardees. By the time we had to halt the concerts in March due to COVID-19, we had presented more than 120 performances, including several free concerts each year for children and their parents and teachers. We look forward to resuming the series in the future when it is safe to do so. And we thank the many homeowners who opened their doors each month and welcomed 100 to 200 plus people to celebrate music and share the beauty of their historic homes. It's been a great way to develop friendships when we enjoy music and support the arts. You met Spencer in the early 1970s when he was going to school at Michigan State, and you were
there living and inspiring a lot of young musicians. Can you talk a little bit about meeting Spencer and helping to create the Creative Arts Collective, which is our nonprofit arts organization for Detroit that mirrored and tried to extend some of the vision of the work that you were doing with the AACM?
It was definitely inspiring to me as well to meet Spencer. I mean, to have someone around with that kind of knowledge to help me put that together, you know. At Michigan State, they opened their doors for us. The AACM was founded because musicians wanted to be a little bit more in control of their own destinies. We had sat down and took a look at some of our great masters that didn't fare that well on their own. So we wanted to have a place where we could present concerts of our own original music.
Can you talk a little bit about some of your memories of coming to Detroit and being part of the Creative Arts Collective in Detroit and the Creative Music at the DIA series?
Yeah. I mean, some of those concerts were very, very exciting. I mean, I remember the time we were at this concert of this high school, you know, and everybody was up there playing and so on, and it sounded great. And then pretty soon the janitor put down his broom and picked up his alto and started to play and just, you know, blew everybody away. I mean, it's like Detroit has a long-lasting history of having great musicians there, and so many great memories. We have great concerts from there. Bird Train Skull Now was there. James Carter was in that band, and not to mention the greats like Marcus Belgrave, and it's just too much to mention. And there's a reason. Spencer would bring us there to Detroit. We'd come into your house, as you know that, and live there and have our rehearsals and stuff like that. So that, I'm ready to get back to that kind of interaction again, you know, now, because that's really the real next step for the people that want to take the music on to the next level.
We can't wait to have you back in Detroit, Roscoe, and to be able to have live music again in Detroit.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our 40-year reunion.
Actually, it'd be closer to 50 years by the time we actually get together.
We did get a little sidelined by a thing called COVID.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be so great because it's going to be Roscoe writing a new piece for my ensemble, which features a new generation of up-and-coming phenomenal musicians. And with our daughter Janina's string quartet, Public Quartet, will be a part of that project.
I'm very excited about coming back to Detroit to perform, you know, and premiere these new compositions and so on.
Another thing, you just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and you did major performances in Ann Arbor at Edge Fest, and then did a world tour. And that is just an amazing, I mean, 50 years of the Art Ensemble, and there are all these new musicians working with new young folks. That is quite an amazing feat.
That's all part of our work. We nurtured that, and that's why we have all these young people now, these talented young folks that are there to join us and further this vision.
Herb and I are signing off on this Labor Day weekend. This time last year, we were sitting next to each other in a huge crowd downtown at the Detroit Jazz Festival, listening to some incredible music like Kenny Garrett and Shakira Durla, and thinking about years past with some just incredible music.
I always look forward to being there. You know, I'm living in New York now, but the Jazz Festival there is always a heartbeat in me. So each time I was brought back here to be a part of the Jazz Tent, so we could talk about, you know, some of the books, for example, even JazzSpace Detroit, you know, and you know, books that come out, as well as what the Mark Stryker and what Kim Hare and some of the writers there have done over the years. So I always thank Jim Gallard and Lars Bijarn for bringing me out there for the Jazz 10. Don't forget about the writers.
Hopefully next year we'll be able to do it again. This year it's virtual, so people all over the planet can hear this great music coming out of Detroit. But also Labor Day weekend, and on this Labor Day, we want to pay tribute to the essential workers, those people that have really helped us through these very, very tough times. And that includes our musicians and our artists and our writers. And we also want to remember those who have continued to keep our history and our legacy alive. I love this photograph of the late Congressman John Conyers with the late Marcus Belgrave and the New Orleans jazz master Charlie Gabriel. Could you just, you knew Congressman Conyers very well. Why don't you share a little bit of your memories of him and how important he was to supporting the arts and equality and justice?
He was certainly an advocate for the arts, Barbara. I've had an opportunity to be close with him over the years, covering him as a politician. But also, we should not forget the role he played in Congress in helping artists out, making sure the funding, the pipeline of funds were coming through for our artists out there who are so often ignored. He was kind of a musician himself. He played a little bit of, saxophone. He was pretty good there. But more than anything was that kind of legislative role he played there, the kind of advocate for the artists. And of course, with Marcus Belgrave, he was always close to me. I mean, what a phenomenal musician, very popular. You couldn't say jazz in Detroit without saying the next word, the next name would be Marcus Belgrave. Joan Belgrave, his wife, continues his legacy as a vocalist out there. And of course, Charles Gabriel. I mean, I think he's still with us, right, Barbara, down in New Orleans?
He's up in his 80s, but he's in New Orleans, and up until recently was directing the Preservation Hall Jazz Band in New Orleans. So Herb and I are
put together a family history on it, too.
Re-released.
Yay! Speaking of books. I know that book.
Yeah, we put it together in 1979, 1980. And we're going to re-release it because very few copies were available back then, and they're collector's items now. So go onto my website, barbarabarefield.com, to pre-order it. It'll be to you in time for the holidays, and Herb will be writing a new intro for it. And then in 2021, we'll be working on the sequel with 40 more years of photographs, some of which you got to see today. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Till then,
it's a wrap.
Support our musicians, explore the sounds, and stay healthy.
Stay healthy, y'all.
Miss
Love you, Barbara. Love you, Detroit.
hope you enjoyed the JazzSpace Detroit film and will continue viewing the fascinating conversation with my guests. My name is Barbara Barefield. I am a photographer, artist, and Night Arts Challenge awardee. Joining me are guitarist, composer, music producer A. Spencer Barefield. He is the artistic and executive director of the Creative Arts Collective, a Kresge Arts Fellow, a Night Arts Challenge awardee, and recipient of numerous grants from Meet the Composer, National Endowment for the Arts, and many others. Herb Boyd is an activist, academic, and renowned author, most recently of Black Detroit, A People's History of Self-Determination. He has spent half his life in Detroit and the other half in Harlem, where he currently lives. And Charles Ezra Farrell, Vice President for Development and Global Programs at the Kresge Foundation and former Vice President for Public Programs and Community Engagement for the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the film. Herb is actually here on the phone, and we can't get him on screen yet. And Spencer, you need to come back on screen. So I want to introduce our guest again. Herb, you here? So we can see Charles, formerly of the Wright Museum, and now with the Kresge Foundation. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. There's Spencer, guitarist, composer, my husband, who we just had a world premiere. That last piece of music was a world premiere that he wrote specifically for the video. And Herb is on the phone, so we're going to try to get him to answer some questions. So I'm going to thank everybody. Some wonderful friends joined us tonight. James Carter, shout out to you. We was trying to get him on the screen with us, but if he has any questions, we will add them, and maybe we'll do this again, and James will be one of our guests. Pam Wise, thank you so much for the wonderful music. That was throughout the film. We had music by Pam Wise, Wendell Harrison, Spencer Barefield, David Alan Grier. Spencer, what was the name of the piece David Alan Grier played? Yeah, and we had Sippy Wallace. We had Griot Galaxy. We had, what else, Spencer? You curated the music for this. So who else did we have in the background?
Well, we had you said Marion Hayden's music and Gaylynn's music and my music and Roscoe's music and the Jazz Masters and Wendell Harrison and Griot Galaxy and James Carter was on there on one of my recordings, and Regina Carter was on there on one of my recordings, also probably with Marion. And
hey, you want to say hello? We have you on speakerphone.
I'm here.
Okay, he's here. So we're looking for questions. Yeah. Hey, I see that Chicago Bo is there. Thank you for tuning in, Chicago Bo. Providing great blues and publishing poetry, photos, and music from Chicago. So the first question comes from Kelly, and I want to also thank Kelly because she was our technical consultant in creating the stream tonight. So it says, how has COVID affected the music community, and how are you still making music? So Spencer, you're probably the best person to answer this. Charles can chip in too, because he's been organizing the Concert of Colors and creating music too. So Spencer, why don't you give us a fast answer, and then Charles.
Well, people have been doing lots of online sorts of things, broadcasts and recordings for broadcasts and live interviews. The very thing we're doing right now to reach audiences. And since the summertime, there were a lot of opportunities to do things outside. Doing it inside is a lot more complicated at this point in time with COVID. It's more risky. And so mostly outdoor things and things online. some of the clubs are just now beginning to open again, and I'm a little bit nervous about that, and because
Yeah.
I think it might be a bit
We went to hear
premature.
some music
And,
last week. Bill Meyer has been, like, I think for the past 20 years, presenting his jam session at Burt's Marketplace downtown in the Eastern Market. And he set up outside, and it felt wonderful, and the music sounded great.
Yeah, we saw Bill at Taslima Bay and Kassan Belgrave, and it was great. It was outside of Burt's Marketplace, and everybody knows, all the jazz fans know that Burt's has been around for many, 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 many years, and it's always kept some jazz happening. And it's the place that when out-of-towners come and they want to know where they can see and hook up with the
Right.
Detroit Jam Session, they go to Burt's. And there's no telling who might walk
Let's
into
let Charles
Burt's. It could be anybody. And everybody,
Let's
pretty
let
much
Charles talk
everybody
about
has
some of the
at
things
some
he's
point
been
or
organizing
other.
and the upcoming Concert of Colors, because that's going to be coming up next week. Right, Charles?
Well, actually, what's really important is for institutions and those who are listening to continue to support jazz artists. Jazz artists are so important to the culture of Detroit. At the museum, for example, I thought it was very important in celebrating the centennial of Charlie Parker that we try to use the resources to put money in Detroit artists' hands to create this series, Bird Lives, of which this is an important part. Before I start, Barbara and Spencer and Herb, I just want to really applaud you for this fantastic program. It really meets the objective of any institution, museum, where you're trying to document history, document the important culture of Detroit, and you've done a great job in doing that. What really stood out as an observer of this program is the phenomenal number of women we have in Detroit who have created such an important legacy. And I think that really speaks to the power of this resilient culture. So this Bird Lives series, which people can go out to the Charles Wright Museum and click on Bird Lives, Charles Wright Museum, and you'll see an effort to continue to document those really significant artists in Detroit, although it was just a scratch of a surface because there's so many artists who weren't able to be included in the series. So that was one effort. You know, how can you leverage the virtual space to continue to pay artists? And that was an effort in this series. I want to talk just for a minute and very briefly about the Concert of Colors. So a program that's been in existence for 28 years to bring communities together and groups of color. This year, rather than canceling that program, similar to Detroit Jazz Festival, there's an effort by Detroit Public TV, the DIA, under the leadership of Ishmael Ahmed, to continue that by having artists' performances taped, broadcast. It will be broadcast October 7th through the 10th on Detroit Public TV, WTVS. And in that way, we'll reach 2 million people. So that's one of the benefits of virtual. Actually, you can reach a broader audience if you have a good marketing arm and marketing team. Again, I celebrate you, and I certainly want to hear from our brother Herb Boyd.
So, Herb, maybe you can talk a little bit about your involvement in music and the arts and how we are connecting, and also a little bit about JazzSpace Detroit, the book.
Well, I think all of this connects up, the interconnection between what the museum has done, and particularly Charles, you know, it's so good to be on these airwaves with you because, you know, over the years you have provided a platform for a lot of the musicians that we highlighted in this documentary, and of course, many of those that we highlighted in JazzSpace Detroit. We're going to continue that, right, Barbara? We've got another edition of that coming out, but
yes.
I think it's a good indication, a good example of hearing a flight, just a flight, you know, of just the enormous palette of black music and jazz in Detroit, over the years. I tried to capture a little bit of that in some of the books I've done, but of course I think JazzSpace Detroit does the best job of offering the words and the photos. And I think we kind of brought those things together in this particular documentary. And I think you're absolutely right, Charles, in terms of the number of women so prominent in our history of music in the city and also in the whole history of jazz itself.
That's true.
I think we have a representative body of them, and having the Regina and having Marion, and to see elements of Jerry Allen, who was such a formidable pianist, composer, and went off, did some wonderful jobs there. To go back and see Alice Coltrane over there, right? That's part of our history with Ernie Farrell's sister, and hooking up with John Coltrane later on. Check out my picture here, doing the same thing, y'all. But, I think one of the things about getting this presentation together is just a continuation. It's just a continuum of what we've done over the years. One of the questions that came in was talking about the Montreux Jazz Festival. And of course, Gayelynn made reference to that. It was like the 1980 when the Montreux thing up to about 1991, and then it morphed off into the whole Mack Avenue expansion which she's done over the years. But all that's a part of the history we've had here in the city of Detroit with our music. Love your shot. One of the few asked, what's your favorite photo, Barbara? What do you think?
Oh boy, that's hard to say.
That's hard.
That's really hard to say. What's your favorite, Herb?
I like the Farouk. I love the Farouk DJ on the top of the building there. Detroit. Always one of my personal favorites. I got Rio Galaxy right in the back of the wall.
Michael Kelly Williams artwork. Spencer, we're seeing you move away from the kitchen. We don't need to see us go. Well,
I just had to put on some headphones.
Okay, I should be doing the same.
While we're waiting, I just want to make a point about the significance and importance of music in Detroit. Detroit is one of these special places in the world, which is a spiritual vortex. It's a place where you have the evolution of not only jazz, blues, techno music. So all these innovators intertwined with the history of resistance, with the social movements of Malcolm X, the Republic of New Africa, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. So it's a city of resistance, and that's why bebop took hold in Detroit, in these very special cities. So we need to continue to celebrate our music and to own it as African impulse, and to again put these artists at the forefront of what we do as institutions. I think it's very important that we need to fund these artists for the new creations in the celebration of Bird as an innovator. I think the bebop is a response to a need for freedom. I mean, that's really what it's about the improvisation, the spontaneity, the high creativity that we have, but it demonstrates a resilience as we look at COVID on how we outcome and how we overcome. So that's why we have to keep going back to our artists in every facet of what the art means and support it. So that's my message, and I'll stay off the mic and leave it to you. And again, kudos for fantastic execution on a vision.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I couldn't agree more with the message that you just shared with us. It's so important for us during this period of time with the challenges to musicians and artists to support themselves with their artwork when they can't perform the performance opportunities are very, very restricted. So we urge everyone to, buy the music and listen to the music and go on to performances online and support the artists as much as you can. I just wanted to say that this just is a tip of the iceberg as far as reflecting all the incredible talent that we have in Detroit, and have had, my photographs barely scratched the surface. I have so many thousands more, and to anyone that I missed, I'm so sorry. I hope I'll be able to include you in the book, or maybe we'll do another documentary, but that my heart goes, I felt, Spencer said, well, did you get Kenny Cox? Did you get Larry Smith? Did you get, there's so many people that I had in the photos, but we couldn't squeeze everybody in. So
into 45 minutes, no.
It wouldn't have been 45 minutes. I had my limit. So
but when the book comes out.
Right. When the book comes out, we're either going to get you in the 1980 re-release, or we'll get you in the 2021 45 years of photographs afterwards. We'll try to get everybody. And I also wanted to thank very much my film editor, Tanya Kaur, who put all this stuff together. It was challenging and a lot of material. And because of COVID, we couldn't do live filming. We did a lot of Zooming, and the quality of Zooming isn't always fabulous. So we did the best we could, and I hope you'll come. We're also going to have this online again. So the conversation and the video will be rebroadcast, and we've actually done some updates in the film that have more photos and the music. You'll be able to hear the music a little bit better. So when we post it again, it'll be the new improved version. So I hope you come back. Are there any other questions before we sign off?
Did you read all the comments? There were some questions in the comments.
Well, I'm seeing one on the screen right now from Karen Moore. What was the last name of the woman jazz artist that had her own label? Johnny Mae Matthews. Yes. And from Mark Loeb. Oh, nope, from Daryl Berry. Still reeling from the John Coltrane celebration. Did you ever photograph him? I wish I never saw him live. I think maybe I was too young, or I hadn't started photographing yet. My dear friend and mentor, Lenny Sinclair, did photograph him, and she's got an iconic photo of him. But not me. And I miss Charlie Parker, of course, because he passed when I was 4 years old. But I'm trying to continue photographing and get all the people I can. Mark Loeb asks, is there anyone? Oh, whoop! The question just disappeared.
Who are some of the young artists that you
dream of photographing? Oh, there's so many people I would love to photograph, but truly, there's two people I want to photograph. Because we're hoping to bring them back to Detroit, and that's George Lewis, who was the first person to be on the concert series Creative Music at the DIA in 1979 with Spencer, and he has been commissioned by Public Quartet to write a new piece for Public Quartet and premiere it in Detroit with Spencer's jazz. I don't know if it's going to be a chamber jazz ensemble with Public Quartet. So George Lewis, 40 years afterwards, and then Roscoe Mitchell. I can't wait to see and hear the new composition that he's going to write for his performance with Spencer's ensembles and Public Quartet in 2021. Spencer, did you want to say something?
It's called the Super String Symphonica, and it's an 8-piece group that also Roscoe Mitchell will be has a commission to write a piece, which is in part commissioned by New Music USA, and it'll feature some Detroit musicians and Public Quartet, and so yeah, that's hopefully next year. And there were some other questions here I was trying to.
Were there a few more questions? I think somebody asked me about the color tinting, if I was going to start color tinting again. And yes, I stopped working in my dark room many years ago. probably in 2001, I had cancer and I decided I didn't want to be around the chemicals. But I probably am going to start doing it again because I actually have a lot of prints that I never color tinted. And let's see, were there some other questions?
Mark Loeb asked, who are some of the young artists that you are following?
Well, I'm going to let you answer that one, Spence.
Well, you would be following them as well as a photographer, but of course I mentioned Kassan Belgrave and Raphael Staton and Trinino Lowe and
Marcus Elliott.
And the pianist Ian Finkelstein and Marion's son, Tariq, drummer, and there's just so many of them. I couldn't begin to list them all. There's an awful lot of exciting new Detroiters coming up that a lot of them you had photos of.
Right, and part of that is because of the mentorship and education. We've that wonderful program up at Michigan State. You want to mention that, Spence? Rodney Whitaker's program at Michigan State has been helping. Marion Hayden, Pam Wise, Wendell Harrison, all of the musicians that we had today have been mentoring young people for decades, and they continue to blossom and carry on the tradition.
Yeah, I just also want to mention that Raphael Lafar is the featured artist for the Concert of Colors. Really innovative piece with 3 drummers that would be featured on October 7th through the 10th at Concert of Colors, and he's just a phenomenal multi-instrumentalist. That's my man. So I really celebrate him. So many, as Spencer said, great young artists coming out of Detroit.
Yeah, Raphael's a Reggie Workman protege. All right. I remember him before he went off to the new school to study with Reggie, and he was quite impressive then. But when he came back, boy, he was really off the charts impressive. So he's a monster. And that tribute where he brought in Reggie Workman to perform with a quartet, doing some of original music and some of John Coltrane's music was extremely exciting. Of course, Reggie's a good friend of mine, and we've performed together in a number of different situations, and we both used to teach at the University of Michigan together for a while. So that was a very exciting project, and
yeah,
kudos to you for presenting that.
Well, thank you. I do want to give a shout out to Kenny Green as well, who's done some phenomenal work, and of course, he's done the annual programs on Sun Ra, and just his new music with Donald Walden was phenomenal. So many people that we can talk about tonight, like Naomi, Shahidas. It's just too many to list, and you're going to get in trouble by naming names and forgetting names. Detroit is the place for music and for jazz and all things creative.
So I think we're going to wrap it up. If maybe Herb, do you want to say any final words? Now's the time.
It's such a part of this quartet.
Okay, and if there's any questions that we did not answer, I will try to answer them on Facebook. I also want to let you know that we will be putting this back up probably sometime over the weekend with the updated version of the video that has more photos. And I want to thank everybody for joining us and giving us such nice feedback. Thanks so much, Charles. Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Spencer. I think we're going to sign off now.